Right, all right, Jesus. Jesus. Hey, we're live. Let me roll that intro. Be right back. Welcome to What We Watch When We Drink, a Booze Dancing Entertainment Network podcast featuring lively discussions about movies, TV shows, and anything else that we're watching while we drink our favorite boozy beverages. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Audible, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can also find us on boozdancing.com, and if you have any questions, comments, show or drink suggestions, email us at boozdancing@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
The Booze Dancing Entertainment Network is live. Welcome to What We Watch When We Drink. We are live tonight on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Where else are we, Ange?
That's it.
That's everybody?
That's it.
That's it.
Isn't that enough?
That is really enough. This is episode 49 of What We Watch When We Drink, I think, right? 49? 49. Wow. And you know what? We normally have it's Whiskey Wednesday or whatever. Thirsty Thursday or something. You know what we're going to call this? We're going to call this Ardbeg Day.
Hey,
get it?
Ardbeg Day.
That's pretty good, huh?
I get it. We're going to get it in about 2 seconds when you give us a little more background.
That's right. So
tell us more.
We have a very, very special guest tonight. This is 2 years in the making, I think. I think this is like getting, I don't know, who? Cher. It was like getting Cher. We couldn't get Cher after 15 years, and we got this gentleman. We have Cameron George, the U.S. National Ambassador for Ardbeg, as our very special guest. Thank you, Cam. Come in. And we have to thank thank Laura Badish really quick. Laura Badish, who from the Badish Group put this all together. And Laura, thank you. She's in the green room watching this on the side with M&Ms and champagne. So
making sure we behave.
Making sure, talking to Freddie DeCorvita. Cam, thanks for coming on. This is great.
Of course. Yeah, it's been long overdue. Very excited to be here with you, gents. And I mean, honestly, this is, I canceled the rest of the evening after this as well. I was like, I'm going to finish rewatching a bunch of movies now. Again, you guys have inspired me not only to keep my glass full, but then to also keep my my pending list up on Netflix and YouTube and Hulu full as well.
Excellent. And with that in mind, we as Cam now knows, we watch something and drink something or watch something and we talk about it while we're drinking during the show. And Cam came to us with an idea, a couple ideas, and we loved them both. And we are going to talk about Coming to America from 1988, starring Mr. Eddie Murphy. So that will be fun. That was a good rewatch for, I think, all of us, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So where do we begin? Where do we begin? So Cam, you've been at Ardbeg how long?
Gosh, it feels like since, for forever now, but it's only been about 6.5 coming up on 7 years now with the brand.
Wow. Yeah. And you said you're in Seattle, right? You're
based
in Seattle?
I live as far away from my wonderful bosses in New York City as I possibly can.
In professional sports, they say that one of the worst cities to be a player in is Seattle because it's the farthest from everywhere on the rest of the continental United States. So you have to travel so many more miles during the season.
You know what? That is absolutely true. I can firsthand attest to that because, I mean, genuinely, it is flying all the way across the country every single time I need to go to the office or really to do almost anything. But I don't get onto a flight unless it is a United Airlines flight, and that is my trusted airline partner. And, we've got a sweet thing going on there.
Hey, future sponsor, Aaron?
Future sponsor. Yeah, come on now.
I need plane tickets. Do they fly to Italy?
You need to get plane tickets.
Can you give me some miles? Cameron, can you give me some miles?
We'll work on it.
Thank you. You're the man. Thank
you. How often do you travel? Are you traveling most of the time in your job?
Yeah. Especially over, post-pandemic as well. It seemed like the travel picked up quite substantially after the pandemic was over, as they say. So I travel, just about every other week to every week. Wow. Usually like 1 to 2 markets every 2 to 3 weeks or so.
Yeah. Traveling is for the young. It is a tough business.
It's in the title though. I mean, national ambassador.
Yeah, exactly. National ambassador. Comes with the title.
It's tough to do that from home. That's right.
Yeah, very. Yeah.
And are you finding that the travel by days, talking to vendors and buyers, and at nights whiskey clubs or events, or try to pigeon the two together?
First off, I'm going to need you to relax and stop coming for my job. You already have a great understanding of it. Yeah, that's basically exactly how it goes. During the office hours, and this is always very interesting. Shout out to our wonderful team at Moet Hennessy, especially the finance team who is always on my back about being late with expenses, as I am yet again this month. But one of the things I always try to make sure that they understand is that not only myself but our other ambassadors here in the U.S., we spend time during the day working and liaising with our brand teams here in the U.S. and communicating and making sure we're able to be on the computer. But then simultaneously, sometimes we have to be writing with a distributing partner and visiting accounts and talking to buyers all day. And then usually at nighttime, I'm either hosting a seminar or hosting dinner or visiting my friends out and about in that market that I don't usually get to see.
Wow, it is grueling, I'm sure, just with all the travel alone.
Very much so.
So I'm not sure how. So were you an Ardbeg fan before you came to work for Ardbeg?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. I was a big whiskey fan. I mean, my love of Scotch whiskey, I think, started because Scotland was the first country outside of the US that I really remember like spending a significant amount of time in. Yeah, we went to the Shetland Isles, so very far north, up in the northern end of.
That's barely in Scotland. It is so far away.
Barely, it is very far. We went for a wedding when I was a kid, and I remember, running around outside chasing sheep and playing in the muck and the mire. This is just when the very first movie reference here, the very first movie, the first Aliens, got its first video game on PlayStation, and I remember it vividly because that was all I wanted to do. And they happened to have a PlayStation at the house that we were staying at, and we got yelled at for playing Aliens, the video game, on the original PlayStation. And then we were forced to go outside and chase sheep and play in the peat. And now I play in the peat for a living.
There you go.
Funny. Well, here's a TV recommendation for you, since you mentioned the Shetlands. Watch Shetland. If you've seen it, it's great.
Yeah,
it is great. And I think it's on PBS now in reruns, I think.
Okay.
It's awesome. Really good. Great crime drama. And I can't remember the name of the actor, but we've seen him in other things, Ange. I'm gonna have to look him up. He's so good. Well, now that we're in Scotland here in the conversation, I think we should pour some whiskey.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where do we begin?
Right. Where are we gonna start? We were lucky enough that Laura sent us a little gift basket each of a couple different expressions. We'll let Cam just lead us through. And where do you want to start, kid?
Yeah, I've kind of been racking my brain all day today. Today's actually a pretty special day in the whiskey world. The International Whiskey Competition results were officially published today. So a lot of really great whiskeys and a lot of really amazing distilleries around the world are celebrating, some amazing and very high scores. I would generally, under normal circumstances, say Ardbeg 10-year-old, but I actually today want to start with Ardbeg Wee Beastie. Wee Beastie this year, actually as of today, won Best Whiskey under 10 years old in the International Whiskey Competition this year.
Congratulations.
Well. Thank you very much.
That's great.
So I think it's best we start there.
Get a little pop. Get a little glug glug.
Glug glug.
I heard it there. Yeah.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. We love a glug glug.
We love the glug glug. We ready for a little toast? A little cheers?
Yes.
Schlancha?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. 1, 2, 3. Schlancha.
Cheers.
Lancha.
Cheers. So walk us through this one.
So this is actually a whiskey that's very much so near and dear to my heart, because I actually got to work and help with the creation of the whiskey. Jesus, that is good.
Oh, wow.
God, I just absolutely love this whiskey as well. I think young whiskeys get a bad rap, especially in Scotland. For some reason, here in the US, we're not as focused on age statements in American whiskey as we are with age statements in whiskeys that are not produced domestically, i.e. like Scottish whiskeys, Japanese whiskeys. We generally like for those, or the consumer mentality is usually that they want those to be age statemented whiskeys. When we relaunched Ardbeg in 1997, it was off the back of some pretty significantly old stock that was sitting around in the 70s and the 80s. And so there were some very beautiful vintage releases. I can think of Ardbeg 1974, 77, some of those whiskeys that became like iconic, right? And then into the 2000s, we started along the peaty path to maturity. So we released Ardbeg very young for discussion, then Ardbeg still young, then Ardbeg almost there, then Ardbeg Renaissance, and then Ardbeg 10-year-old in, I believe, 2006. So that was the story of how Ardbeg 10-year-old became the flagship whiskey. But after that, we stopped and we kind of waned away from releasing too many age statemented whiskeys. And we started to move into the non-age statemented space. And we really popularized that through the mid-2000s. I can think of Ardbeg Ugadal. Where are you, my friend? There you are. Think of like
Ardbeg.
That's a beauty.
And
think of Ardbeg Ugadal. Yep, exactly. Two of those two whiskeys were non-age statemented whiskeys, and they happened to win World Whiskey of the Year from the International Whiskey Competition numerous times, and scoring very, very highly as well. And so we started to hear a little bit of buzz and a little bit of feedback. Well, you know what? Ardbeg's whiskeys can't be that great because they're non-age statemented, and if they really believed in the product, they put an age on the outside of the number. And I think that that's kind of BS. You know, I think we choose to make whiskey to a flavor profile rather than to being constricted by age by age statements. So in true Ardbeg form, in the latter part of 2019, we decided, you know what, we're going to release an age statemented whiskey. You want another age statemented whiskey in Ardbeg's core range, you're going to get it. Here's a 5-year-old whiskey, the youngest age statemented whiskey that had been put out on the market, at least in our competitive set. And so Dr. Bill and the whiskey creation team sent me 25 samples of whiskey packaged in groups of 5. So family A, family B, family C, family D, and family E, A1 through A5, E1 through E5. We tasted and eliminated a lot of the outliers. And what we ended up selecting was what is now bottled as Ardbeg Wee Beastie. The majority of the whiskey is matured in ex-bourbon casks. First fill, second fill, cheeky little bit of third fill going on in there as well. And then the remainder of the whiskey is matured wholly in refilled Oloroso sherry casks. So those sherry casks were actually used to produce this whiskey before, Ardbeg Ugadal, and now they're on their second use at Ardbeg Distillery. So quite an interesting whiskey that we've made, and it is coal and dark chocolate and cacao. It's a stunning whiskey at 5 years old.
I love it. Licorice and ash.
Yeah,
and the peat comes through as just delicious charcuterie.
Nice smoked little.
Oh yeah, it's
sausage.
really good.
We have talked about this, I think, a number of times on the show about old versus young peated whiskeys, and how old peated whiskeys are almost not peated anymore, right?
Yeah.
The peat
they're
just
so
kind of
mellow,
goes
just
away,
kinda...
right? Old Kalilas, old everything. There's that was peated, right?
Yeah.
But then you get these young whiskeys, let's say less than 10, 5 in this case, and you get that punchiness, of the smoke and the peat. And I personally want that. I don't want to lose that. I want
Yeah.
that really aggressiveness, not in an ugly way. I want that what Ardbeg is supposed to be about. And I think this is like the DNA in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I know the 10 is really the DNA, but this feels like the DNA.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. You said something that really interests me as well. Like at this point in my career, I've kind of taken the boxing gloves off with our marketing departments. And I understand why Dr. Bill, the whiskey creation teams, sometimes are not at odds, but maybe have a little bit of tension with the marketing departments. Because a lot of whiskey marketing is designed to tell you like half truths, I think that the conversation around age statements are one of those half truths. I think that we're now on the precipice of discussing another really important one. And I think in my line of work, especially in heavily peated whiskeys, this is the one that probably makes me the angriest as well. And it's surrounding ppms, or parts per million, right? So when you're burning peat during malting, you're essentially trying to stop the germination of that grain. You're trying to halt that enzymatic process. So you're burning peat as a naturally occurring fuel source. That fuel source still has organics that are being released when you burn them. Some of these organic compounds are called phenols. And essentially, these phenols are a wide group. It's a super group, but then also the name of one of the actual aromatic compounds itself as well. So there's tens of thousands of them, but the human palate can only really register like 15 of them at best, and that's if you're a super taster. So
only dogs can get it, and some cats.
Yeah,
humans can't.
Exactly, humans can't, right? So to me, it's really interesting when we talk about like the method of measurement of that compound. There's a couple of different ways to do it. There's one way that tells you the larger swath of numbers. There's another way that tells you the individual compounds that you're rendering. And that's the one that I would be more interested in, because if they're compounds that I can't detect, why do I care about them, right? And then on top of that, you get to a really interesting conversation about how each distillery operates, right? So one of my favorite other distilleries on the planet, where are you, buddy? I've got some Lafroig around here somewhere. I know I've got a ton of it down here.
The next door neighbor.
Yeah,
the next door neighbor.
Like, yeah, 2 doors down, right? So like
yummy stuff.
Yeah. So this is a really great whiskey from Lafroig, a single barrel from Lafroig. Looks like this is from Warehouse Liquors in Chicago. Great retailer. But yeah, interestingly, Lafroig and Ardbeg use a very similar spec of barley, right? So we are asking the Port Ellen malting facility, or one time we were asking Port Ellen malting facility.
A lot harder now.
To produce barley at a phenolic content rate of like 55 to 65 parts per million is Ardbeg spec. Lafroig is about 45 to 55, so they're just shades under us. Right. But when you talk about the distillery's operations, Ardbeg is on heads run for about 15 minutes. So we start collecting a lot our new made spirit and the lighter and more floral compounds that come over, and some of the more volatile phenols that come over with it at an earlier rate than Lafroig, who starts capturing at like 45. So if you've ever wondered why like Ardbeg is light and floral and fruity and citrusy, but then also very peaty at the same time, and Lafroig is dark and umami laden and maybe a little bit more savory, maybe a touch more like pleasant sulfuric compound and a little bit more like earthy, and also heavily peated, it's because we start relatively the same. But if you were to look at the in drink of Ardbeg and take like a ppm of the actual whiskey itself, this would be down to about 25 parts per million. Lafroig would in drink be down to about 15 to 20 parts per million.
Yep, the numbering of that number system measurement has always been, I think, confusing to people anyway.
Yeah.
And some brands want to put a bigger number on or a smaller number because bigger's better, right? And I think can be confusing because no one really understands it on a consumer level, I think. So it's tough.
What was the one, not the Bunnahabhain. Was it Bunnahabhain? The one with the
Octomore.
Octomore, that's it.
Octomore.
That's the one.
Oh,
With the
Octomore.
ever-increasing ppm.
Ever increasing numbers, yeah, 300. But
375 ppm, whatever that means.
and I think it doesn't matter much as long as this is the most heavily peated whiskey we make, is probably just as good as saying 300 something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But it's always an arms race, this is the same reason why, the biggest budget usually becomes the box office hit,
Well, it's funny you said that about you and Lefroy and getting their malt to the same place. It's having the same ingredients and two kitchens making the same product, but it comes out different, right? It's two chefs making the same thing, but it's different kitchens, it's different processes, it's different recipes, and boom, you've got two different whiskeys in this case.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
Not saying good or bad either way, but there's a lot of variables in making anything in a kitchen or in a distillery, I think.
Agreed. And that's my favorite part. I think that's my favorite part about whiskey is like the mechanical aspect is wonderful, right? The raw ingredient aspect is incredible as well, because it also tells you a story of like a sense of place of where that grain or where that raw ingredient, that water, that oak, that barrel, the previous occupant of the barrel, all of these things tell a story of, some people would say terroir. I effing hate that term. I use provenance instead as a descriptor, because you also get to fold in under that a conversation of like the human element, which to me is the most romantic piece about whiskey. And yes, I do want to be romanced by my whiskey as well. To me, I think that there's something very beautiful about that idea that like two different chefs can work on the exact same dish, but because of their lived experiences, because of where they came from, their upbringing, they may process and utilize the ingredients ever so slightly different from one another, and then have a drastically different output. I think that in the world of whiskey, you should consume them all. I just hope that you really fall in love with Ardbeg.
Well, I know I have. Big fan for a long time. Well, on that note, why don't we switch gears a little bit and talk movies?
Yes.
How about that? We've all got a little whiskey.
You said sometimes the biggest box office makes the biggest hit.
That's right.
I don't think this had the biggest budget. I don't think it was out there.
I don't think it was
yet this thing was a big hit.
Yeah.
Totally. Yes. And why don't you give us some
numbers?
Some rundown. Yeah, get the numbers, and we'll get little the box score on Coming to America, and then we'll talk about the movie a bit.
Okay. All right. These are just the basic facts. So Coming to America, release date June 29th, 1988. Budget $30 million. Let's see. Opening weekend, USA and Canada, $21.4 million. Gross box office, USA and Canada, $128.2 million. Gross worldwide, $288.8 million. So I'd say it did pretty well, right?
Yeah.
What was it? 4 times your budget? Is that what it's supposed to be? Is that the moneymaker?
It used to be twice your budget was break even.
Okay. Well,
so to be a hit, you were 3 or 4 times whatever your budget was.
Yeah, I think it did okay.
The post-production cost is usually equal to your budget.
So give us a quick synopsis here, Ange, and then we'll start jumping in.
Sure, I go with the short ones now. None of those long synopsis. An extremely pampered African prince travels to Queens, New York, and goes undercover to find a wife that he can respect for her intelligence and strong will.
It's funny even thinking about the concept.
It's a rom-com, right?
It's a rom-com, yeah. And it's the old story of, you have to marry who your parents say you're supposed to marry, right?
That's right.
Everything's set up. You're being set up, and you got to do what mom and dad say.
Yeah,
but the kid doesn't want to do that.
I do find it is, on one hand, it is a rom-com, but then at the same exact time, it's like a buddy comedy at the exact same time as well.
Yeah.
Because like those two characters do spend so much time on screen together. Like Arsenio and Eddie spend a lot of the time together, even reprising like roles that are not their main role. They both in this movie play multiple characters, which I think is hilarious. Yeah.
The whole barbershop is just tremendous.
Oh, it's
great.
could have been a movie by itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or a sitcom. Yeah. I forgot that Arsenio was actually funny.
Yeah.
I actually totally forgot that he was actually funny. And I think about the talk show, he was pretty serious on the talk show.
Yeah.
And
the interwebs have spoken. The interwebs have spoken. I received a text from a friend who I guess is watching. How much does a movie need to make to be profitable? Usually estimated that a movie needs to make 2 to 3 times its budget to become profitable in Hollywood after marketing costs. Splitting revenue with theaters and more are factored in. Since the creator only cost $80 million, the 160 estimate would be twice the cost. So,
interesting.
That's courtesy of my dear friend Rick. Thank you, Rick.
That's interesting. Wow, it is a buddy comedy, and then sometimes there were times I thought they're not doing enough together. I'm sure there was a lot cut out, right? Yeah. And you got to get back to the basic story. But them on a road trip is a funny concept alone, right? That they could be really great as those characters. Mm-hmm. Them coming to New York and Eddie being this wide-eyed guy who's like, let's go live like every other New Yorker does. In
fish out of water.
The Bronx? Queens? Bronx? I can't remember.
Queens.
Queens.
Where you go to find a queen?
And
you go to Queens.
You go to Queens.
Come on, that's in the plot.
And they leave all that luggage outside. On top of that poor guy's cab. It's not gonna be there very much longer. And it wasn't.
No, absolutely not.
And then they're shopping at wherever.
And it's actually what Brooklyn is with the
filming location was Brooklyn.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be Queens. So it's all over New York. I mean, they're everywhere.
No.
Right.
It's
mostly
so
Queens,
great.
Brooklyn, and Manhattan.
Yeah.
At the top of this, you were kind of given the synopsis as well. And there was actually, even before they left for New York, there was actually a quote that I thought spoke really to me as one of the reasons why I love this movie is because it feels timeless. There are some comedies from the 90s and from the late 80s and I'm just I could watch this over and over and over again and still feel the effect of it. And there's a quote that there's an exchange between Arsenio and Prince Hakeem. So Arsenio says, what does he said? What did he say? He said, you say you can have a woman who will obey your every command, but you'd rather have a woman who has an opinion. And he says it like a question, What do you mean?
What are you thinking?
What are you thinking? Right. And it's in a time like right now where some elements of the world are becoming more regressive. That stuck out to me as just so on the nose. And then Prince Hakeem doubles down and says, commands are only for dogs. And then when he meets that woman who's supposed to be his betrothed, he asks her to stand on one foot and then bark and then bark like a dog. Yeah, exactly. Right. It's beautiful storytelling.
No. Bark like a big dog.
Like a big dog. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a really good point that, we've looked at some movies here on the show that go back 20, 30, 40 years, and they don't hold up in the culture that we live in today. Right? There's a lot of things that are not politically correct or just not the way we are now. They were funny then, and maybe they still are funny to some extent now, but they're not. There's things in there that are not as funny as they once were today.
Agreed.
This movie, I think you are right. There is a very pro-woman attitude in this movie, right? Mm-hmm. There is a sense of finding yourself and doing the thing that you want to do in life and finding the person you want to be with. These are all good things. This is great. And there's no the misogynist stuff is at a minimum. And it definitely is something that I watched with my daughter a few nights ago, and she didn't hit me. So that's a good thing, right? So I think she laughed a lot. So you're right. I think it is a movie that really plays into different eras. It's very good.
I think what really helps too. I mean, Eddie Murphy's charisma in this movie is off the charts.
Off the charts.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, he's so watchable. It's insane.
Absolutely.
Don't you want that? You want that Eddie Murphy charisma in everything he did, and then he didn't do that, right?
Yeah.
He was right. But
and
so where
it
is
doesn't
this
hurt
on
to
the?
have it doesn't hurt to have James Earl Jones and John Amos in it either.
Oh
Oh
my god! Yeah.
The cast is
I mean,
insane.
if you're gonna throw some guys in to play dads,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they're
Oh
okay.
my god!
Well, James Earl
Exactly.
Jones,
Darth Vader.
yeah, right. But he's going between like when he's all Mr. Authoritarian, he's Darth Vader,
Yeah.
and then he's like the guy from Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
Well, and,
That's
he's
right.
Darth Vader
Yes.
to the extent some of his lines actually are lines from Star Wars.
Yes,
yeah.
they
Do
are.
not alert him to my presence. Yeah.
Yes.
I will deal with them.
Oh, I didn't catch
Yeah,
that.
the
That's
Easter
funny.
eggs are great. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's quite a few.
well, you know what's really cool is that there's because of this movie, there's a Star Wars, and then actually, I guess this might have been like the original or origination story, or like origin story of the Disney multiverse, basically, because there's a crossover between Star Wars and then also the Lion King in this movie. Because
That's
okay.
right.
exactly,
No,
right?
that's right. Yeah,
Both
he's the
things
voice.
are owned by-
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. It's
and
all
his
connected.
Mom is the voice of the Queen in Lion King as well.
Lion King,
That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like a
actually,
Pixar.
going back to the Lion King, like the music, I thought was kind of like the opening music when they're like panning
Yes.
over the jungle.
Yeah,
I thought
yeah,
it was
yeah.
Lion King, but then according to the facts, the national anthem of Zamunda, which plays at the start of the birthday celebration, is the same melody as the national anthem of Fredonia in the Marx Brothers film Duck Soup.
Oh
Yep.
my god, I didn't even notice that.
Wow.
I saw that. I'm like, oh, Aaron's gonna love that.
Oh my god, I did not know that. We did.
Well, and
we
that's
did
probably a John
Duck Soup.
Landis thing because he's an old
He's
movie
probably,
guy.
yeah, he's an old movie guy, probably a Marx Brothers fan.
He's an old
That's
movie guy.
funny. Well, and then the Easter egg of the two guys from the Duke brothers
Dukes.
from
Oh
Trading
yeah,
Places.
Trading Places.
yeah.
So I didn't look at this. Where is this in the Eddie Murphy chronology of his films? This is like the fifth movie, third movie. So where's he in Saturday Night Lights? He's done with SNL by this time, right?
Yeah, I think so. His first movie was about 48 hours.
Yeah, this is
That
number
was-
6.
6.
Wow.
Got
So
it.
he does 48 Hours, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop, The Golden Child, Beverly Hills Cop 2. Then he did his comedy concert, Eddie Murphy Raw, and then this one. And that's kind of, maybe the highest he gets. And then after that, he goes more into, campy things and animation
Yeah.
stuff.
Wow. And this is just a real winner. I mean,
Yeah.
boy, it's just so good from beginning to end. I was surprised it was 2 hours long.
Mm.
I thought they were making 2 hour long comedies in the 80s. That's
I think-
incredible.
The storytelling was just so like verbose because you get character arcs for every single character, right? Like,
Is it
for
actually
every-
true? Like
Every
the
main
sister.
character.
Yeah, the sister gets her arc, and
Exactly.
and Arsenio
Yeah.
gets an arc, and
Exactly.
everybody.
The dad-
It's so funny.
Yeah, even
And-
like Mr. McDougal, has a great arc as well. I thought it was when I think about the time and the footprint as well, the timestamp. I'm like, oh yeah, that movie could have been another 30 minutes and I would have still watched it.
And
I
and
needed
I
the
think,
Louis Anderson arc.
and I think two things out of that. One, how much did they cut?
Yeah,
I know.
Could that easily
Oh,
have
I
been
think they
2
cut
or
a
3
lot.
hours?
I bet you there's like
And-
another
and then-
half hour in the barbershop.
At least.
Agreed.
Oh, easy.
And then Landis went back to the studio and wanted to do a director's cut where he trimmed it down because he thought the pacing was too slow.
wow, okay.
And the studio refused because they're like, this movie is a hit. You don't mess with this. We don't re-edit a hit. What's wrong with you?
No,
Wow. No, it's just I think it hits so many great movie plot lines that are just universal. Not even movie, they're just life lines,
yeah,
life plot lines, and just a young kid trying to make his way in the world and doesn't want to follow what his parents say, regardless if he comes from a rich family or royalty. He wants to go out on his own, and of course, who pushes him out on his own? Mom. Mom's the one that mom says you get the girl you want to get. You don't listen to dad, but dad's kind of the pushing the kid back. I think it just there's some really great universal themes, and it's really funny. It's just funny, and even not dirty funny. It's not even blue funny, right? It's not that 80s college humor movie.
There's only one moment. There's only one moment of like, and it's not even dirty. It's the bathing scene where he's being bathed and she pops up from outside of the water.
Yes.
Exactly. You know, like still hilarious, but that's such a minor footnote. It's one of my favorite quotes. Yeah, but it's not like a reoccurring trope or theme in the movie. Right.
But you know, at that time in a lot of 80s movies, you know that there's executives that said we needed to have this much nudity in this film.
Yeah.
We gotta have some nudity. And we have a couple jokes, even though it's I'm sure this is R-rated, but we got to have a little bit of the blue stuff because that's just the way movies are now. You have to have that. Right. And so it was at a minimum. It wasn't that bad. It was good, right?
I'm trying to think about there was a crush that I had out of this movie, and I wrote it down. Vanessa Bell Calloway, who plays Imani Aziz, who he is betrothed to, immediately at the very beginning of the movie, the one who jumps on one foot and
one leg,
barks like a dog. That's like a dog. That was one of my very first like crushes in the world as well.
What did she do before, and where did she go after this?
She was a cover girl model.
Oh, a model.
Immediately after this. This was the largest role that she had in her career, but she also did a lot of like modeling for L'Oreal and things like that as well. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it is. It's star-studded, and it's and you have to. And I kept thinking, when in the barbershop scene, with all the various scenes where the guys play other characters, this is a really big cast, but it's really not, because you've got these guys playing multiple roles.
That's true. Yeah.
Playing that old Jewish guy is so funny.
Oh my God.
So great.
Oh, here's another factoid. Factoid related to that. Factoid. So where is it? Hold on. Okay. According to John Landis, it was his idea to have Eddie Murphy wear makeup to play a Jewish man as a sort of payback for Jewish comedians wearing blackface in the early 1900s.
That's funny.
Writer Barry Blaustein consulted with his father for what a Jewish man would actually say.
That's amazing. That's perfection.
That joke is hysterical.
He does it so well.
At the very end, with the soup.
Where's the soup?
Where's the soup?
How's the soup?
Just try it. Try the soup.
Well, all of the infighting in the barbershop is so great, about the greatest boxer or whatever. Great. It's so funny. It is just so hilarious.
Yeah, it's very funny. Like, I literally went to my barber yesterday, and we were sitting there, and people are arguing, and I just, the intersectionality of the movie, I thought, is one of, in rewatching it, I was just like, man, like, how just spot on as to like the Black experience, then also talking about like, positive comedy, like comedic, like fence posts as well. I think in terms of like great movies, because as we talked about, there's nothing really truly offensive about this movie and how it approaches comedy. And then also like the strong reinforcing of moral values as well for like younger people as well, and as also women watching that movie as well. I thought it hit so many boxes that I can't say many comedies today really check off for me.
Who's the Jerry curl guy? What's
Eric LaSalle.
Oh my God. Yeah.
What's his name?
He was on ER, right? Eric LaSalle.
Oh, Eric LaSalle, right? Eric LaSalle. So, and that character, he's the bad guy, right? He's the
sorta.
He doesn't.
Bad guy. He's
Yeah.
No,
he's
just not a rich kid.
He's just kind of a rich kid, just kind of an a-hole.
Kid,
he's basically what Eddie Murphy's character would have been if he didn't have a little bit of a, more of a backbone.
Yeah, exactly.
But he doesn't come out ahead at the end, right? Eddie gets the girl because he was mean. He wasn't great with her as a boyfriend, and he was, just not the greatest guy in the world.
No,
and that's a good moral story too, right?
Agreed.
Well, what was funny too? Just like I don't know, could you call it racism? What he was doing, the things he was saying to Eddie Murphy, about what were you
totally.
chasing lions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was just
Catch
kind
the
of funny.
monkey.
You'd think there would be a bond,
Yeah.
maybe, but instead it's
Yeah.
like,
Yes. He's making fun of him.
Which
Yeah.
is, and it's to
Yeah.
me, it's so funny because it's like it's another very classic trope that we've seen in so many styles of movies outside of like what I would call like a black comedy, because I do think that this is like, it is a rom-com, it's a buddy comedy, but it's also a black comedy as well, and it doesn't shy away from that at all in any way, shape, or form. But it uses tropes that like, and I think that this is also why it was such a global success, is because it uses tropes that no matter what race, creed, religion, or walk of life you come from, like all of these things are identifiable. We've all met somebody with money who was like kind of an a-hole and didn't treat the people around them or in their circle the right way, and that we've not necessarily like rooted against them, but wanted to see things not work out as the world tells us it should,
Agreed.
So I love that.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll take a break here and let's move on to another whiskey. Just a reminder, this is What We Watch When We Drink. We are live on the Booze Dancing Entertainment Network. We are pleasantly excited and happy that Cameron George has graced our airwaves tonight from Ardbeg, the U.S. National Ambassador.
Did we mention 2 years in the making?
2 years in the making.
2 years in the
2
making.
years in the making.
We could have aged a whiskey.
And that his official title apparently is Master of Smoke.
Yep.
And the Master of Smoke. That's right. What's on your business card? Master of Smoke or U.S. National Ambassador?
Fantastic.
Many titles, many hats.
Many hats. Yeah, many hats. Yeah, guy who likes to drink smoky things is another one.
That's
of
a
them.
long
Yeah.
title.
That's my middle name. That's my middle name.
Maybe a little backstory. Cameron and I met because of Laura Banish. Again, thank you, Laura. We met at this crazy event in Los Angeles for Ardbeg at Comic-Con, LA's
awesome.
Comic-Con. It was really awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
And Ardbeg commissioned, I guess is the right word, to have a comic book made by a real comic book writer based around the core expressions, the 10 Ugadal and Korvekin, correct? And and they had a separate tent erected outside of the LA Convention Center, and they had a whole world created inside of this tent similar to what the comic is about. It was crazy. My wife and I were there, and it was just an amazing night. And that's when I met Cameron for the first time. This how the conversation started about coming on the podcast. That was two years ago, I think. And and that was just crazy. That was a wonderful evening, and meeting all those great artists and what the folks at Ardbeg put together that night was just amazing. It was really fun. Really fun.
That was one of my favorite events that we've done in the last few years as well. That Planet Ardbeg actually is now coming back again over in the UK. We just had another artist. Donald was the first one. This new artist, I actually can't give his name away totally yet, as things haven't been completely solidified. But was over taking some wonderful headshots and photos, and his art is being utilized in one of the new campaigns for Ardbeg here coming up as well. So we're stepping back into the comic book world, which makes a lot of sense, and especially for me, I'm a big comic book fan as well. So I'm very excited.
That's great. All right, so before we go to this next whiskey, I think we're gonna do number the 10, right? Next.
Yeah. Let's definitely do Ardbeg 10-year-old.
But we kind of glossed over this little thing that you said that you were a creator of Wee Beastie with Dr. Bill. That's that's kind of nuts.
Dr. Bill makes all of the whiskeys. I humbly got to put my 2 cents in, and it was not rejected. It wasn't rejected. So that was one of the honors of my career so far, was to get to help putting that whiskey together.
Dr. Bill is amazing.
He's incredible.
And I've met him a few times, and he is just one. And heard him on our friends Single Cast Nations podcast. He's just so interesting to listen to, and he's so smart, and he's so funny, and he makes really great whiskey. And I know Ardbeg is.
Don't forget the accent.
He's got the accent. Yes,
he does have the accent.
I went to a tasting with him. He did here in LA a number of years ago, and I was just, I don't know what he's saying. I really don't know what he's saying. It was for actually a Glenmorangie thing, but it was kind of tough. It was fun.
All right. It's very funny when Bill and I like go out to dinner or something like that. I can tell when the night needs to start winding down is when I can understand him less and less and less and less. And I don't know if it's because of my faculties are draining, or if his accent just gets a little bit stronger the more drams that we have together.
Oh, that's so funny. All right, the classic Ardbeg 10. Classic.
Gateway to Ardbeg.
Yeah, this is without a doubt. This is my favorite whiskey in the world. This is easily my favorite whiskey in the world.
Arguably mine too. Yeah, definitely in the top 10, easily.
Yeah,
top 5.
This is just one you have to have. It just has to be on the back bar.
My rule is Laphroaig 10, Ardbeg 10, Lagavulin 16.
Nice.
If you need to have 3 peated whiskeys on your shelf, those are 3 great ones.
Wait, where's
maybe
Kalila?
Kalila 12, but I have a lot of IBs of Kalila, so
right.
But
which you could argue are probably better anyway. So
than the standard one on.
Although the standard is pretty
as a one-off bottle, not better than an everyday bottle. If you could get the independent bottling every single day, sure, maybe. But
I don't know how many times I've recommended Ardbeg 10 over the years. Right? It's just one of those. What heavily peated whiskey should I get? Ardbeg 10.
Well, I gave samples to one of my neighbors, and then every once in a while I get the text, "Hey, you got any more of that Ardbeg? Hey, you got any more of that Ardbeg?" I'm like, "Dude, seriously, go buy yourself a bottle."
And it's still reasonable, and it's still reasonably priced. It's still not.
Yeah, was it $60? Something like that.
Yeah, probably.
I'd say
exactly.
All right, Cam, jump in. Tell us what we wish to know about it.
Yeah. First and foremost, this is my favorite whiskey because I think this whiskey embodies the place and the sense of place the best. When you walk around Ardbeg, when you smell, the smell of the mill and smell like the grain and that barley being broken down into grist, grit, and husk, and then you walk through fermentation, then you smell all of this like really bright, almost zingy, like fresh lime and green apple happening from the fermentation. And then you walk through the distillery and you get this overwhelming sense of warmth as you're standing next to the stills, and then walk into one of the dunnage style warehouses and you can just smell all of this like vanillin and oak lactone interacting with a lot of the different things that you had already engaged with. And then you dive your nose into a glass of Ardbeg 10-year-old. The distillery comes to life the exact same way it does when you walk through it. So to me, this is my favorite whiskey on the planet because of the fact that it reminds me of some place where I feel so at home. When I was first hired, I went to go live at Ardbeg for an extended amount of time, a few weeks. Stayed at the distillery. My boss, David, and I were, around the distillery for 3.5, almost 4 weeks, working every position at the distillery.
Mr. Blackmore.
Yep. Yes, Mr. Blackmore. Yes. So we were hanging out at the distillery for a number of weeks and drinking Ardbeg 10-year-old basically every night down on the dock. And this just really became ingrained in me. So when I think about the place, this is the whiskey that snaps into mind. The same exact way that when I think about Laphroaig 10-year-old is their thumbprint, right? Same thing. And I think you were bang on when talking about like Log 16 being their best kind of foot forward in terms of expressing their thumbprint, the style of whiskey that they make there as well. I think that this whiskey to me stands apart from any of the other whiskeys at the distillery because it's the foundation and the building block that everything else is built upon. we approach maturation a little bit differently than most of the other whiskeys being made in Scotland. We don't work in finishing. That just doesn't work for our style of whiskey. So we don't really take whiskey out of ex-bourbon barrels and then put it into sherry casks or then put it into port pipes, for secondary maturation. For the most part, we work in components that are aged separately and then being brought together after a period of time. So for instance, like with Wee Beastie, the majority of that whiskey was aged in ex-bourbon, first, second, third fill ex-bourbon, and about 30 to 40% of that whiskey spent its whole life in Oloroso sherry casks. Here in Ardbeg 10-year-old, not you, you're Ugadal. Here in Ardbeg 10-year-old, all of this whiskey is matured only in ex-bourbon barrels. First fill, second fill, cheeky little bit of third fill there as well. So this to me there's no influence of, European oak. There's no influence of sherry or port or other something that would have color, aromatic, or flavor contributing congeners and compounds as a previous occupant. None of those things exist. So this is just a really great, pristine image and visage of Islay through an Ardbegian lens.
Yeah, I think well said. I think that this speaks of the people. It speaks of the distillery. It speaks of the island in so many ways. It's when you think of Islay, you think of these kinds of whiskeys, and then you drill down a little bit more and you think of a whiskey like this. Yes. And that speaks of the island. You've been there, it's a beautiful place. It's beautiful people. It's a beautiful whiskey. And there's the people of the island made this whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. It's just beautiful. And it's the backbone, like you said. It's what it's all based on. Everything after whatever year you said, every expression afterwards is based on this whiskey, and and you see it, you feel it throughout all the one-offs, all the Ardbeg days. You feel it.
Totally. Just the difference between the Beastie and the 10, where the 10 just rounds it out.
Yeah.
And some of that punch, some of that just right in your face hammering you get with the Beastie is just so pleasant, and so it's still flavor forward, but it's so balanced and flavorful.
This could be like an everyday peated drink.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's when you said that, Ange. It's probably not designed totally. It's not designed to be a session whiskey, but you can definitely sit with this one.
Yeah.
A bottle of it.
What you like, right?
It's only 46. You could session
it. It is, right? It's not crazy.
It's not a dare. It's not whiskey with a 5 or a 6. It's where it needs to be. It really is. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. And we didn't talk about this with Wee Beastie and earlier. They both, I can speak about both of them. They both make really great cocktails.
Yes.
I use them both for old fashions. That's about the extent of my cocktail making. But I know you guys did that series with the barbecue guy.
DJ Barbecue, Christian.
Yeah. Right. There was some Yeah, he did.
Is it a brisket sandwich?
And I've actually basted a brisket with this.
Yes,
you did.
Yeah. We made. I don't think I have it up here. It's in my refrigerator because I plan to use it. But we actually do have an Ardbeg sauce as well.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I use it on anything that I'm gonna grill or smoke. Yeah, it is good.
I think wasn't there a video that you guys put out from some chef in Scotland?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And he made the barbecue sauce, right?
Yeah. It was Christian. It was
Christian. Okay.
Yeah, it was Christian.
Yeah, and just I got to do that. I got to make barbecue sauce with whiskey. That's a great idea. Yeah.
I think it works with dessert.
It really does. And I absolutely agree. 1,000%, especially Ardbeg 10-year-old. I use Ardbeg 10 as like especially if I'm having like vanilla ice cream or something.
Yeah.
Vanilla ice cream.
Good.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
You know what's good too? A sour, like an Ardbeg sour.
Yeah, oh,
with
absolutely.
the lemon and the sugar. Oh,
Yeah.
And any kind of dessert with lemon cookies,
yeah.
lemon.
We did
We did that.
The lemonades, the Girl
Lemonades?
Scout lemonades. Yeah,
the Girl Scout cookie
Yeah.
lemonades
The
and
Girl
the
Scout
Ardbeg 10.
cookies.
that's it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But you
we
gotta-
did the
you
side
gotta-
by side with the car chase.
Mm.
Right, it was the three of us, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah. When I was there.
Yeah. Right. So we did the car chase, one of the car chases. I forget which one it was. It might have been the Fino Sherry
Okay.
and the Ardbeg 10. The Ardbeg 10 was a little better with the cookie.
yeah.
Because it was
Yeah,
a little bit
yeah.
more welcoming.
Anything lemony, anything vanilla.
No.
It works through the whole meal.
We
Yeah.
started talking about this like 10 years ago about boozy milkshakes and pouring Ardbeg or peated whiskey over ice cream. And
Yes.
it works
Yeah.
so great. I mean, like, it's a little watery, but it's just so good. It is so good. It brings out even more flavors together with the vanilla ice cream and the
1000%.
whiskey.
Jeez,
And
I've
just
done that
vanilla. I haven't done that either.
I gotta
The
revisit it.
vanilla, the ice cream. It's interesting with the peat and vanilla. I mean, there's obviously you're getting some vanillas from the barrel, of course,
Right.
A lot of it.
in the whiskey, right? And then when you like, it's hyper spaced with vanilla ice cream. It's just a great combo. Oh my god, it's so
It's
good.
incredible. I agree.
It's a good kind of whiskey, and it is a good whiskey for dessert products, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm, mhm,
For
mhm.
desserts, just so good, so good.
We always kind of say that there's how to Bill describe it, a confectionery sweetness to Ardbeg. A confectionery
is.
sweetness.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It like kind of comes out like first you get that blast of peat, you get that smoke,
Yeah.
and then the vanilla comes in at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know?
You know, I think I've been drinking it so long, I kind of don't always get the peat anymore
Yeah.
because
Agreed.
now it's just a food group.
Well,
It's just-
it's like working out, right? I mean, you're
yeah, that's true.
I was
Um,
dragged kicking and screaming through the bogs. with
Yeah,
these two.
Mike was not.
Jackalope.
Mike was
and
not.
now
a
and now I'm enjoying it, much to my dismay.
not only are you
Oh,
enjoying it, you're spending a lot of money on peated whiskey.
I don't know what happened.
He was bog boarded. There we
I don't
go.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bog boarded,
exactly.
totally bog boarded.
Name,
right.
rank, and
So-
serial number.
Mhm.
broke me.
Or we like
You
to say
know-
he was dragged kicking and screaming through the peat bog.
I love
That's
it.
true.
And at some point, the kicking and screaming ended.
You know,
Now
You
he's
know
got
what's
Stockholm syndrome.
I was gonna say our whenever we're visiting Isla, we try to take people out into the bogs. It's one of my favorite experiences to do, to take people out so they can actually see how hard it is to cut and hew peat. And so there is it's hard work, and it's usually done commercial, like peat hewing and peat cutting. We're in the prime season for it right now, like June to like part way through like mid to late July. Then it usually stops. But I remember a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was back in Scotland with a group, and had a group that I was taking out to the peat bog. This peat bog that is the commercial bog is called Ardbeg bog, and this bog it sits basically right in between high and low road. So basically next to the road that you take to get to the airport and next to the road that you take to get all the way across the island. Now, the left-hand turn that you take to get to the peat cutting experience happens to be the left-hand turn that is that takes you past Mickey Heads' house. And Mickey Heads was our old distillery manager.
Right.
Yep.
So I remember we were driving on the island, and we drove past, and I was like, oh, like that's Mickey's new house. And so I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, like I'm here with a group. It'd be great to see you. We're on, and he responds, he's like, yeah, we're on holiday. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, like, enjoy your holiday. Great. We take this group to the peat cutting experience, and they're cutting peat basically in Mickey's backyard. And I think I turned around to go grab a water, and I reached down, grabbed this water bottle, and I look up, and Mickey Heads is washing dishes in his sink. And we make direct eye contact. And I was just like, oh, okay, you just didn't want to. It's Faish. You just didn't want to be bothered with anybody. Got it. Leave Mickey
so
alone
funny.
during Faish. Technically, I
God.
guess he was on holiday, So,
Yeah. But at home.
Exactly. At home.
It was a staycation for Mickey Heads.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll never let it. If I ever see him again, I'll never let him forget it.
That's so funny. All right, let's get back to the movie for a little bit. Anything we didn't cover? We didn't look at
the initial casting when James Earl Jones got the script. He wanted to play the John Amos role.
Oh, that's interesting.
Really? And they had to tell him that's not your role. And they initially wanted to get Sidney Poitier to play the John Amos role.
Well,
wow.
You know,
it just would have been a whole different movie if either one of them played John Amos role, and then who do you get to play King Joffrey?
Yeah. Ooh, that's it. Yeah. Who would you? I don't even know.
Who would have that kind of voice or that kind of
at that time
gravitas at that time?
Yeah. And you know what to me, one of the really interesting things is that Eddie Murphy almost didn't play this role. Like he actually almost didn't take he almost lost this role.
But he was a co-writer.
He was a co-writer. You know who they almost cast in this in Eddie Murphy, then they as Eddie Murphy or as Prince Hakeem, and then they looked at him as well for Simi as well.
Do tell.
Was Wesley Snipes.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I could sort of see it, but
the movie would have been very different.
It wouldn't have been
very different. Yeah, very different.
I mean, Wesley Snipes could be funny. I mean, White Man Can't Jump, but he's done other movies where he's pretty funny. But
exactly, this
is peak Eddie Murphy here.
This is peak Eddie Murphy. Yeah,
you just, I mean, that guy's got some star power right there.
Exactly, but then they brought him in. I think he plays Eddie Murphy's brother. I want to say in Coming to America 2.
Yeah.
I think he does. Yeah. No.
And the other thing that you don't realize is John Landis had made so many great movies, but he had made 4 duds in a row. So he did Spies Like Us, Clue, Three Amigos, and Amazon Women on the Moon.
Oh, Three Amigos.
And
oh my gosh.
Those 4 movies were basically like, hey, you better get a hit or you're out of here.
None of those movies sound good. Yeah.
And Murphy fought for him to be the guy directing it.
Wow, I love it.
And then, it turned into a box office smash for him, which helped his career a little bit. Another string of losers after that probably doomed it. But you don't know what you're making until you're making it.
No. Every time I saw John Amos on screen being a dad, I kept thinking of his what was the 70s comedy?
Good Times.
Good Times. And with Jimmy Walker and him yelling, Junior?
Yep.
Junior.
He was really good. He was great.
He was. I always have loved him. He was
while
so
we're on
good.
John Amos, John Amos, there's another little factoid here. The barbers call Akeem Kunta Kinte. John Amos played the adult Kunta Kinte in Roots.
Right.
Madge Sinclair played Kunta Kinte's wife.
Yes.
And James Earl Jones played Alex Haley Jr. in Roots, The Next Generations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
there's a definitely.
A lot of callbacks.
I'm sure Eddie thought about all this writing the movie, right?
Probably.
And putting all these Easter eggs and connections with other movies. What year did Lion King come out? That's like a 90s movie, right? Yeah. Probably. Was it after this?
94?
So after this.
Yeah, after this.
Right?
After this.
Yeah, it was after this.
Yeah.
It's really funny that they were cast later on to be and they were in this movie together.
They vocally they just carry they carry the show.
They do.
Royalty with bringing in their voices.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
There's like a something like definitive about like their power, even like through their voice. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Samuel L. Jackson, Cuba Gooding Jr. I mean, there's so many little.
Wow. Don't forget, we got Frankie Faison, who was in The Wire.
Frankie Faison.
And then he was in Banshee, and he was in a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
Who else you got? You got Vondi Curtis Hall, who was at the basketball game, who got on his knees, worshiping.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So he was in that Justified reboot last season.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He was the bartender or the guy that owned the bar.
Yeah, who had like a cloudy past. Yeah.
Right. So it was neat. All the little casting. It was kind of funny because I watched this and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot Cuba Gooding's in this.
Louis Anderson.
Yep.
Well,
James
Louis
Franco.
Anderson's there.
Yeah.
The studio came in and said you got to have a white comedian.
Oh, that's
It
really
can't be
funny.
an all-black cast.
See, there you go. The
And-
studio execs
and,
making these little decisions.
Yeah,
They
these
had
tiny
when they were
decisions,
coming out with Coming to America 2, the thing they were doing. Murphy and Arsenio Hall were doing some press for it, and they mentioned that they gave him a list with 3 names on it, and Louis Anderson was one of the 3 names, but they wouldn't tell anybody who the other 2 names were. So, like at that point in time, who would be like junior level white guys you could put into something like this to play that silly role as, today I'm on lettuce. Soon I'll be. Then the real money will come in.
Gottfried. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know who you throw in there.
No idea.
But yeah, so they went with Louis Anderson, but they were forced to bring in one
weird.
white guy because the old studio, an all black cast, we can't make a movie.
You wouldn't do that.
Really,
No.
really, you can't.
Well,
Yeah.
what's very funny to me is even this movie was the very first movie with a predominantly black cast, and definitely the very first movie with a black lead actor that became a box office hit in Japan as well. So I was just like, oh my gosh, like what an interesting time for cinematic exploration there.
Huh. That's interesting. I found this website. It says things you missed as a teen watching Coming to America, and gender progressive for its time. Eddie plays a different character than he had originally been previously played in other movies. Zamunda has a lot in common with Wakanda.
Yes.
Interesting.
I thought about that the whole time. Yeah.
I kind of thought about it too. Yeah. And all the cameos of people who become stars later on. We just talked about James Earl Jones and Samuel L. Jackson.
So speaking of Zamunda, another factoid. Here we go. The name of the fictional African country the main characters are from is called Zamunda. This name was taken from a Richard Pryor routine where he referred to a fictional African tribe of the same name.
That's
the
awesome.
writers had originally named it Zmuda, but director John Landis had it changed to Zamunda.
That's awesome.
Huh.
That's really awesome. Yeah.
I
love the factoids. Love them.
Yeah.
I do too. Go ahead, Cam.
I was going to say, I'm curious as to why this movie is actually rated R. That was another thing.
A little bit of nudity, the language.
I think the nudity. Was PG-13 a thing then?
But think about, how many nude
started.
scenes do we have? We got
in the beginning.
But I think any nudity I think any nudity back in '88 gets you an R. I think
is an R. Okay,
I think so.
That's fair.
Was there language?
Well, there was a few F-bombs, when he's when he's standing on the balcony and he's like, everybody's telling him to
you too.
Yeah, I think nudity was the cross between PG and R's at the time. I think, and then now I don't know. Now it doesn't matter. This is interesting. The movie features references to other Landis movies, an opening dance sequence set in Zamunda with dancers doing flips, and Arsenio's character, Reverend Brown, both pay homage to James Brown's church scene from the Blues Brothers. And if you carefully listen, you can hear the name of Frank Oz, who was in the Blues Brothers, announced over an airport speaker.
Oh,
that's weird. Yeah. And the most famous reference is to Trading Places, which we know we talked about with the Duke Brothers. Right. That is so odd. Yeah. It's cool that I love that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of references to old movies too.
I forgot that it is Arsenio who is Reverend Brown as well.
Yes.
I completely forgot about that because I was thinking about the other role. He had another flash role in this movie as well, in the bar that they visit.
He's one of the women.
Women.
Right. Yes,
exactly. And he hits on himself, which I thought was genius. Yeah.
Well, in the credits, they call that particular character "Extremely Ugly Girl."
Yeah.
That's really
I think
funny.
the credits are a little bit less politically correct, maybe.
That's fair. Yeah.
So of the women that he talks to, there's Devil Woman.
Yeah.
There's Big Stank Woman. There's Stuck Up Girl, Tough Girl.
That's so funny.
Kinky Girl, Strange Woman, and Fresh Peaches.
Yeah, that is very funny. Yeah. That first girl says, she was like, something people don't know about me is I worship the devil. Yeah, with the deadpan face. It was great.
That whole minute
the
speed dating
montage.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that is so
My
funny.
favorite though is the woman doing shots.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's so
Just-
great.
I'm not even, I mean,
She's
it's
just knocking him back.
It
That
was
is
just
so funny. The McDonald's thing is kind of weird. The McDonald's lawsuit thing. That's kind of funny.
No sesame seeds on my buns.
Yeah.
See, we have 2 all beef patties. We have
They have 2 all these.
special sauce.
They've got the Big Mac. We've got the Big Mick.
The Big Mick. The Big Mick was.
They've got the golden arches. We got the golden arches.
Oh my god.
And when he yells at that photographer, he's like, "Hey, get out of here! Don't make me break your camera." Yeah, it's just phenomenal. Yeah.
That is so
Actually,
great.
I love when John Amos just gets really pissed off at James Earl Jones's character, for offending him with his daughter and all that stuff. It was just great. Don't make me break a foot off in your ass.
Exactly.
What?
In your royal ass.
In your royal ass. That's right.
He was still polite about it.
Uh-oh, sorry about that, gents.
Oh, it's okay. You're still there, though, right?
It's okay. You're still there. We hear you.
Yep. Here, let me see what I can do to get this bad boy going back.
Little technical
We've still got
difficulties.
audio, so that's good.
We had audio. That goes back to one of those universal themes of this dad protecting his daughter, right? He didn't sell out, right?
Nope.
He could have sold out.
There was a
Taken
line. There was a line.
He was close.
But there was a line. Like if she managed to score the rich guy, great. But I'm not going to sell out my daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It did feel like he sold her out. Remember at that party that he held at their house right after they beat up Samuel L. Jackson, they were like, "Hey, he's clearly accepted us."
Oh, he wanted to.
Yeah, he's clearly accepted us as as his equals, basically. And then they show up, and then they end up being the coat check gentlemen. And the people, the valets as well.
Yes.
And the
And
bartender.
then at that movie, and the bartender. And then on top of that, they said, "Hey, my daughter has agreed to marry this guy who she never was even proposed to." So, on one hand, he didn't support her at first, but that's part of his story arc and character development. Is that he then comes around to realize, she should make her own decisions and also make her own way in the world as well.
Yeah.
And if the kid just happens to be the future king of Zamunda, hey, that's not bad. That's a bonus.
Bonus.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was a little nervous when John Amos said these guys were going to be parking cars, because I'm guessing that they didn't know how to drive a car.
That's true.
Right? Yeah, probably not all driving.
Who needs to drive a car when you have your own driver?
No, they were royalty. They were driven. They didn't know how to drive.
That's true. No.
And what do I do with this?
As somebody who still can't drive a stick shift, I sympathize with you.
No shame. No shame.
Guilty.
Neither can we.
No.
Never learned, never tried.
But Mike, what's your line?
They've made many
right?
advances. Many advances.
They've made
Cars
many
don't
advances.
they don't run on steam, and they're not crankshafts either. So
No, and there's no horse in front.
This automatic
No more horse in
transmission.
front.
It's all
That's
good.
right.
You don't even say,
That's true.
That's right. Well, we talked in the very, very beginning of this podcast or live stream that is a spectacular evening ahead. And we have one last whiskey that we were wonderfully sent from Laura Badish. The new Ardbeg Day, 2024 Ardbeg Day, spectacular. And Cam's got the bottle there. And we have a sample to try. And want to walk us through this beauty, Cam?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is just, as the name would imply, just such a spectacular whiskey. Originally, its name was supposed to be Dark Circus, but our marketing department, actually our legal department, didn't so much fancy that. But there is a festival, a dark festival of fruits and aromas that come off of the nose of this whiskey. To me, it is one of the most beautiful kind of like cornucopias of a fruit-laden whiskey that we've made at Ardbeg. Years ago, when Bill said, "You know what, you're going to absolutely love 2024's Ardbeg Day release," initially I was like, "Hey, what's going on? What is it? What's the cash treatment?" Right? Because Ardbeg Day is such an interesting time for the distillery. Right, over the last few years, we've done what? We've done we've had Ardcore, We've had, who else is down here? We've had Drum. We've had Heavy Vapors as well. We've had Ardbeg Black up here. Exactly. Just incredible whiskey. There's just been so many different experiments. Now, the way that I love to think about Ardbeg Day is that it's actually an experiment or an opportunity for the distillery to kind of like shed its actual skin and try something pretty interesting, right? So like last year, Ardbeg Heavy Vapors. And one of the things that I love to do is I love to have a couple of drams and maybe sit in front of my computer and read the mean reviews sometimes of some of the whiskeys that we make at Ardbeg. I actually got my hand slapped once by our friends in HR who said, "You can't respond that way if you're going to be doing this, Cam." And I was like, "All right, you're absolutely right." But you know, one of the interesting things, like with Heavy Vapors last year, one of the reviews that I read about it was like, you know, like, I don't know, it's not that heavy of a whiskey, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's really no color to it. And to me, I was like, you missed the entire point of the experiment. We changed the way that the distillery's setup was so that we took the purifier off of the still at Ardbeg, which has never been done. We've never made whiskey like that since the, you know, mid 1960s. So it was a heavier distillate that was going into lesser used casks, because we wanted to showcase how different that whiskey's upbringing was and how its production varied from the atypical Ardbeg.
So it was nature versus nurture experiment.
Exactly. Yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%. Here, now with Ardbeg Spectacular, we're back to, instead of focusing in on a distillery DNA experiment, this is a maturation-based experiment. So when Bill, you know, told me, hey, 2024, we're going to be utilizing port casks, I was like, oh my God. I immediately was like, we're going to have this Glenmorangie Quinta Ruban style whiskey, but it's going to be just smoky as Ardbeg. And then we got the wonderful Spectacular, and I popped open the bottle and I immediately started looking at Dr. Bill's notes from it. And one of the things that stuck out to me was refilled ruby port casks. So not first fill. These ruby port casks had previously been used over at our sister distillery of Glenmorangie. So to me, what that meant was that these casks that we were using at Ardbeg had some of the residuals and renderings that would have come from the previous occupant re-liquefied and basically eaten up by the spirit from Glenmorangie that went into these casks. And to me, I was like, oh man, I'm really bummed out. But that's also why I'm not the greatest whiskey maker in the world. Dr. Bill had a completely different visage from this. For him, he wanted this whiskey to still completely read as an atypical Ardbeg, just with something a little left of center, kind of plussing up, as we would say, the rich date and sultana, maybe a little bit of the big plum and pluot that you would see because of the previous use case of these casks being mature in a little bit of ruby port. So the coloration isn't super dark and intense, but it's definitely a lot more ambered than what we had just seen in Ardbeg 10-year-old.
Yep.
And a lot more coppered than what we had seen in Ardbeg Wee Beastie. Even though the use cases for Ardbeg Wee Beastie and for Spectacular are fairly similar, right? I can't age statement the whiskey for you, but it wouldn't surprise me if the whiskeys were around or of a similar age in archetype. And then also, in terms of the proportion of whiskey that spent its entire life in ex-bourbon versus the whiskey that spent its entire life in ruby port casks, or in the case of Wee Beastie, refilled Oloroso sherry cask, are oddly similar as well. So to me, these two whiskeys, the first whiskey that we started off with this evening and the whiskey that we're ending with, have a lot more in common than we would have initially thought at face value.
This is a one and done?
Yes, and this is a one and done. We won't experiment with this again. You know, there may or may not be some ruby port casks still hanging around Ardbeg, but will we use them to make Spectacular version 2? More than likely not.
And how many bottles of this?
So here in the U.S., there's a little over 7,000 cases. 8,000 cases globally. Here in the U.S., I believe we took about 6,000 of those. So there's a pretty healthy allocation, but there is less of it that was made than last year or 2 years ago. So Ardbeg Day releases hopefully are going to go back to being a little bit smaller than they had been in the past.
Okay.
And then there's also the committee release version, right?
Now, this is actually the area where I feel proudest as an ambassador, as giving this feedback. Very rarely do I think that we at Ardbeg make mistakes. I absolutely love my job 1,000%, but I'm also very much so as a whiskey fan, willing to say like, oh man, I wish that we would have done this, right? So in the past, yes, we had a committee release and then a general release. The general release always being bottled at 46% ABV. The committee release usually going out at a much higher ABV, sometimes around 49, sometimes up around 50, 50.2. Now, this was the very first year that we went from having 2 releases down to 1. And instead of choosing the release that was of the higher ABV, we went with bottling it all at 46%, right? Which still is amazing because it's still non-chill filtered whiskey. So we're not removing any of the long chain lipid fatty acids. You still get to have a conversation about like how it smells, how it tastes, and then also most importantly, how it feels when you drink this whiskey as well, because we haven't removed any of the long chain lipid fatty acids. But for next year, from what I saw from some of the decks, that was feedback that myself and our team here in the US gave at a very, very early stage when we saw that there was only going to be 1 release. And next year, it looks like the release is not going back to 2, but at least we're going to be 1 release next year, and it will be at a higher strength in ABV.
I've had our mutual friend, Travis Tidwell. Travis is he's a local Ardbeg person in the West Coast.
He's fantastic,
and he's also in our whiskey club, and he may or may not bring certain Ardbegs to our backyard events. And we've had this discussion before, Travis and I, about whether the committee releases, which is better, the committee release or the regular, the larger release. And I tend to get to taste both over the years, and I kind of lean towards the non-committee release. And I have a lot of the committee releases too. I tend to like for whatever reason, I usually like higher strength whiskeys. I kind of like the non-committee releases sometimes more. I think more often than not. Yeah. I'm not the lower ABV. I'm not sure why.
I think you're absolutely right. There have been numerous releases. Actually, where'd you go, my friend? Where are you? There you are. So, for instance, Ardbeg Black.
That's a good example.
A great example. I actually prefer the general release to the committee release. Right?
I do too.
Here, what I really think it is, to be honest with you, especially in casks that have had a previous occupant of something like a Pinot Noir, or even something like a port as well, where the maturation of that product oftentimes happens on skin contact. You get to have a conversation about like not only oak lactone coming from the aging of the casks, or coming from the cask interacting with the spirit itself, but you also get to have a conversation about the previous occupants, like acidity and also tannin as well, imparting some of its will. And tannin responds very favorably to water, right? Like, so tannin generally starts to soften when you introduce a bit of water to it. So to me, some of those lower proofed, even though they're 46% ABV, some of those lower proofed whiskeys that maybe had a previous occupant in that barrel that may be high in tannin. Some of those whiskeys are my favorite because they are softer, they're more patient, whereas at cask strength or at even 50%, they're a little bit too tightly wound and they're just too raring to go. They're just not patient whiskeys.
That's really interesting because it's almost like you're like putting up a couple drops of water in your glass by having 2 or 3 more clicks of water on the percentage scale in the cask. It brings out more a little bit. I don't know. It's weird.
Absolutely.
So
even the first sip here, like as soon as I took that first sip and swallowed it, big plume of almost like ash, and then also like dryness, which to me is indicative of like skin contact and tannin contact as well. Yeah.
So let's talk about Dr. Bill for a second and the Ardbeg Day stuff. So is he knew this is a connection with the marketing department too? How far in advance is he planning these releases? Does he have releases set up or concepts of releases for Ardbeg Day set up years in advance? Or when is he thinking about the bottling of one of these, whatever experiment he's doing for whatever year?
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
This stuff takes time. It doesn't happen.
You think so? Yeah.
I mean, if he's not doing finishing,
No.
right? If it's not just like, it's 6 months in a Oloroso sherry cask or whatever, I would think it's going to take. You got to plan this out, right? You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you monitor the progress as you go. But I'm sorry, Ken, go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. I can't dare to speak for Dr. Bill, but as somebody who knows his work and gets to work with him pretty regularly, I do know that he has a set of experiments that are ready to go right now. That there at any given time, there are far beyond 1 or 2 projects at Ardbeg that he feels like, great, we can release this, and this is a great whiskey. Some of the things he does have to take out of cask and put into like what we call totes, or like neoprene, basically these large, very big vessels that are airtight, so you're not allowing for further oxidation, and then there's also no interaction with oak happening in there as well, right?
Yeah. So they're done.
So they're done. There are projects that he has taken off of oak and put into neoprene. There are projects that he has, to be honest with you, and he'd be the very first person to tell you that he's forgotten about, right? Like, for instance, Glenn Morangy, Tale of Tokyo, right? He had been experimenting with Japanese Mizunara oak back in the early 2000s, right? And completely took his eye off of it, went on a world tour for a couple of months, came back, and he was like, the whiskey was ruined, I once heard a story from one of my friends at Ardbeg who was working there that I will allow to remain nameless because I don't want to get them in trouble. But I'll never forget a story being told to me about a set of casks that had dropped below 40% ABV. These were very old barrels of Ardbeg, very old, that were then wrapped in for experiment, never to be bottled or to be used for production purposes, but to see what would happen if, right? And then those casks were wrapped in salt packs and cellophane, right? And this person said, as a Baptist preacher would said, I said, arise, arise, my son. And I watched the ABV come back up above 40% ABV.
Wow.
Salt? What did he do? Like put salt around the outside of the cask?
Yeah, salt
and
packs,
then
like giant packs of salt. And then basically saran wrap, right? And that salt wicks away water, right? So the water is absorbed by the salt.
Okay. So the ABV goes up.
ABV.
What effect would it have on the staves though? Would it take the moisture out of the staves? Would they crack? I mean, I guess
They would
so thick
you
and
think
so-
they would dry him out? I would think
You'd think it'd dry him out. You would think it would dry him out.
But the staves are pretty thick. I mean, they're not like
Yeah, the staves are very thick,
half an
and
inch,
also,
so
I mean, there's still spirit inside of those staves.
Yeah, it's like-
inside of the cast. Like, yeah,
It's
not
not
like
like you're
it's
rotating it. You're still keeping enough of it wet, probably. So it's
yeah,
That is
and it,
fascinating.
yeah.
So, gotta ask about the marketing. I just wrote an article for a magazine, and I referenced you and that crazy Comic-Con thing.
Mhm.
And the Ardbeg marketing machine is amazing, right? And I remember when I first got into whiskey with a friend here in LA, and we were watching those roller coaster videos and the alligator videos that were, I mean, they're classic. They're so funny. And I've heard Dr. Bill talk about this too, about the marketing side of the company versus the what's in the bottle, right? And how is that for you trying to sell this stuff when you've got this bombastic, larger than life marketing, insane, crazy ideas, whether it's with that big Humvee that was driving around, was it a Humvee, the Masters of Smoke thing, going from town to town, or there was like a big roadster or like a bike or something, and or the chopper, and then or even the Comic-Con thing. And you've got this whole insane kind of larger than life marketing concept going on endlessly. And then you've got what's in the bottle. And how do you like kind of reconcile the two when you're out talking to the public? Talking to retailers.
Yeah, I think one of the things I love about the brand is that, for myself, I have always been somewhat of an enigmatic personality. And this brand really spoke to me, both in its liquid profile and then also in the way that it shows up in the world and in the universe. Because it makes whiskey for people who maybe are a little bit left of center, people who are obsessive and compulsive about that things that maybe mainstream culture tells us are maybe a little bit like left of center, or so maybe
weirdo whiskey.
Yeah, we, I'm not afraid to say it. We make whiskey for weirdos, and
that's all right. Honestly, with that, we're weird. We're good.
And honestly, everybody in the world is a little bit weird. I don't want to live in a world that is stagnant or vanilla, or where everybody is the exact same. I want a colorful world around me, because I think tapestries are just more inviting and much more interesting when they're colorful. So with that, at times the marketing for Ardbeg can be not necessarily synchronized to the well wishes of Dr. Bill and the whiskey creation team, right? And then there are instances where they just absolutely hit it out of the park. Spectacular, I think the festival theme and the way that they brought to life the festival theme was exactly that. I also think the comic book was not atypical for the whiskey world. People struggled to see, how there was a connectivity between comic book culture and whiskey culture, but we obsess about things and vintages in the exact same way. So I understand why that was a natural reach for them, right? Here in the US, maybe it wasn't communicated or activated other than at Comic-Con. That Comic-Con activation was one of the best activations I've ever been a part of, and I loved it. That was a great event. I'd also kind of feel and kind of say as well that, I think that marketing is important because it is a vehicle for communication for these brands to speak to who they think we are. And that's why I also think it's important to provide them as much context and as much intel to have as informed a conversation as possible. So things like Ardbeg's Ardbeg Committee as well are a great way for us to be able to give real-time feedback to the distilleries about the things that we like, the things that we'd like to maybe see take an evolution as well. So if you're big whiskey fans or big Ardbeg fans, please go to ardbeg.com and sign up for the Ardbeg committee, because it's the best way to find out about new whiskeys that we're making, and then also to give your feedback as well about the whiskeys that we're making.
Nothing, Aaron. We got
Can't
nothing.
hear you, Aaron. It's better that way. It's just better. It's a win for everybody.
It's a win. Nothing. Technical difficulties. You're going to go
Just
out.
tell
come
him we
back
can't
in?
hear him and see if he just stops.
Wait. Again, we did this again. Let's see what works this time. I did this before. You're like, oh, you're muting him. I'm like, no, I'm not muting him. I swear to God, I'm not doing anything.
Hands up.
It's not me.
We're not doing
It's
it.
him.
No.
Come on, bye.
You're back.
Wait, speak.
Hello?
There,
You're back.
Yes.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, good. So one of my thesis, not a big thesis, is that the aging community of whiskey drinkers, just because I guess they're getting old and not drinking as much and not buying as much stuff. But then whiskey companies have to find new markets, have to find younger drinkers, have to find younger buyers. And I think in a lot of ways, Ardbeg is kind of ahead of the marketing curve, and has been, because a lot of this, like comic books, is hitting a younger audience.
No.
And, right? And so a lot of companies look really old. They look stodgy.
You can't call Ardbeg. Yeah, you can't call them stodgy at all.
You cannot at all.
No.
You can call a lot of companies that start with the first 3 or 4 letters of Glen. Most of those feel very stodgy.
Yeah.
And are they getting new buyers? Are they getting new drinkers? I don't know, but it seems like the company that has the crazy little animal dog who the Wee Beastie is fighting the thing in the bog, and is going to be more interesting or the comic book marketing campaign is going to be way more interesting to younger drinkers than the old stodgy Glen company.
Well,
that's my thing.
The brand will be more interesting, whether they like the taste.
That's what I mean.
Of the story, right?
Well,
yeah, they're also coming out with
it's getting you in the door.
Saturday morning cartoons too, right? Isn't that what they're doing?
That'd be great. Why
nice.
not?
That's nice.
I think it's just it's a way of making the tent bigger and bringing in a younger audience. And
I also
baby boomers are getting old. We're dying off. Kids.
I also think to a certain extent, when you go into any bar, they have the usual suspects behind the bar.
Yep.
And it's, these bottles are always in every bar, and no matter what bar you go into, you're going to find these same, 12 bottles, bourbon, Scotch, Irish, whatever, they're all there. And to the extent you can market like this, that puts the 13th bottle behind the bar. Now we got another one.
You're right.
And
you're right.
And people like that. Now we got another one. And we got another one. And
I agree.
I think that's really the big thing is you're probably not going to unseat some of those old Glens because they're in every bar. But you're going to make room on the shelf for yourselves because
and for others.
Because you're making a statement with these whiskeys. It doesn't have to be 18 years old. It doesn't have to be 21 years old. It has to be good.
True.
It just has to be good. So you know what? We went out and we made something that was good. How about that?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we talk about all the time about table whiskey, something in the house. And the 10 certainly would be, I'm going to have a bottle just in case somebody wants something that's peated. And,
this is a style you like.
You grab that bottle.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think the general face of the product speaks volumes because that logo everyone knows, that Celtic look everyone knows, that Scottish Gaelic look everybody knows. It's what speaks of Scotland. It what speaks of Islay, and then what's in the bottle is just magnificent, right? We all know that. And then you've got this other thing, which this speaks to all kinds of drinkers, right?
Yes.
This is exotic. But then you've got this whole other marketing thing that, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of fun. I've been to so many fun Ardbeg events over the years, and the wackiest things like the the space stuff, the Galileo.
Oh God, yeah.
All right, that whole marketing thing and sitting inside of a, and I remember that's the first time I wore the AR glasses, right? Where you could look at the distillery. And this is so cool. This is what is needed, I think, in a lot of companies to bring this younger generation to brown spirits.
Yeah.
Not just Ardbeg, but a lot of companies.
You know what else helps? It's 6 letters and it sounds the way it's written.
That's right. That
totally. Oh, that too. You can pronounce it.
It's not, for lack of a better word, gibberish.
I hear all the time. I hear Ardbeg. Yeah.
That's true.
But then they can't with Hoogadal. But then you get Hoogadal and Corey Brecken. It's like, what?
Yeah.
No, and even
one vote, just one thing. If you're talking to Dr. Bill, bring back the alligator.
Oh God, alligator! What a great whiskey! What a great!
Oh my God!
Here, that's the thing, is that we did bring back alligator, and it was called Scorch.
Yeah, Scorch. Right.
That was
like 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. That was 2nd edition alligator, essentially. That was basically us reusing those alligator casks. Alligator casks.
Yes. Yeah. Scorch.
Alligator char.
That was the extra dram at a society event.
Extravaganza events. Yeah.
But 10, 12 years ago? When was the first time that came out?
That was good.
And it sold. They couldn't give out enough drams. It was gone.
Mike, I think that was the event that got postponed because of Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
I think it was that one.
Funny. But that was the extra dram, and they're like, "Yeah, we only have enough for half the room. Sorry."
Oh,
we got some though.
I think
we got some. Some people did.
I love that there's this unique thing that comes out once a year from Ardbeg, and Dr. Bill's brain is just like spinning away for years in advance, coming up with. And I always, does the marketing come first, or does the whiskey come first? Does he say, "Hey, I've got this thing, you guys, and it's really cool, and it's this crazy cask that it's ready. Now go figure out some kind of thing to go with it"?
No, it's Bill. Bill creates the idea first, and then marketing basically reverse engineers what they think they'd like that whiskey to speak
That's
about.
Great.
Bill actually very famously keeps like a dream journal as well. And so a lot of his ideas come from like things that he like dreams up.
He's the David Lynch of whiskey.
Yeah, absolutely.
He is the David Lynch of whiskey. Yes.
Yeah. That's right on the nose. Yeah.
That's terrifying.
I like Lynch.
Oh my God. I love Lynch too. He's great. Oh, he's nuts.
But I mean, like in a good way. It's terrifying in a good way.
In a good way. In a good whiskey way, that's for sure.
In a good whiskey way, yeah.
If this is manifesting his dreams, then I'm pro Lynchian. Dr. Bill.
I can't get over how little peat is on the nose of the Spectacular. It's all the stone fruit. It's so delicious.
It is good.
Oh, it's really
like a mince pie and apple pie.
I love that little. I love that little bit of dryness.
Yeah, and then the taste, you get hit with the blast of the ash and the dryness, but then it's a really nice flavor.
Oh, I love the finish.
You don't get like the meat, you don't get the peat, you get
it does.
Yeah, it's a beautiful whiskey.
I'm ripping through this one.
Now that's been released.
Yes. Yep.
It's out.
And it's everywhere in the U.S.
Yes, I believe it is everywhere in the U.S. I know Texas was lagging just a little bit, but I do believe it is available. Actually, I know it is available in Texas because I had some photos coming in from Texas of people who had received their bottles. Yeah.
Yeah, I think someone told me that they had it at K&L here in Los Angeles. So it's out. It's out there. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
now I'm going to have to go to the store and buy one.
I know. I was actually thinking the same thing.
And I can't just buy one bottle. It gets lonely. It needs a friend.
That's right. You get two because you never know. There's not that many of them, right? So you better get two. This was really, really spectacular. It really is good. Any last thoughts on Eddie Murphy's Coming to America? Aside from that, we love it.
It's just a lot of fun. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cameron.
I think it deserved a better sequel and one that was sooner as well. No,
I didn't see the sequel. Not good.
I don't remember the sequel at all.
That's a no.
It came out in 2020. It came out in 2021.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that kind of says a lot too.
Yeah.
It went straight to Prime too, right? Didn't go into the theater.
Yeah. I think it went straight to Prime or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
You know,
I think it's because of the pandemic. The pandemic, though. I think that's why.
Yeah.
Oh, that's probably true.
Nobody's in the studios anyway, so we'll sell it to Prime.
It's funny that there wasn't. I wonder if there was a concept for a second movie back in the 80s or in the early 90s. Was it just ignored? Did Eddie Murphy not want to do it? Now that he's sort of kind of resurrecting his career, okay, now I'm open to the idea. Isn't there another Beverly Hills Cop coming? I think I heard.
Oh my God!
Yes,
I think
love
so.
it. All right,
Yes.
fine.
And he's got Ashton and Reinhold doing it with him.
Oh wow!
Do it again. So
there you go. So I think he's more open to things like his past.
Well, he made
his past again.
A bunch of Beverly Hills Cops. He did.
Yeah.
He did all the Shreks.
Yeah,
there's a lot of money.
Shreks.
A lot of money there.
All right. So I think it was a great choice, Cameron. It was a really great choice. I think it was fun to revisit. It's a really funny movie, and I don't know I don't remember what you say, Ange, on the Rotten Tomatoes. Is it good or bad?
I think it did okay.
Medium,
it was like
average?
7%, like a 7.
Reviews were okay.
Let me go back. I just closed the.
It feels like it's aged really well, like we talked about.
Yeah, it feels like they're getting robbed for that Rotten Tomatoes score, but
73%. 70%. I think that's respectable.
73%. Not bad.
Yeah.
Now,
and I think you had him at the height of his powers, and Landis maybe with his last hurrah.
Yeah.
So it was just a great mix of people coming in, and whoever did the casting, they
nailed it.
Academy Awards for casting should have been then. They did a great job putting that casting.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, this is great, Cameron. We can't thank you enough for coming in. Now, you did something that no other guest has ever done. You sent us a list of your favorite stuff ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I want to go through this, not too in depth, but it's great. You listed your favorite movies as Coming to America, Old School, which was that one of the choices of movie tonight? Old School.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love that movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Aliens.
Yes.
Aliens, another one, and Rush Hour.
Yeah.
Those are 4 fun movies. Excellent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And your favorite cocktails, the Ardbeg Daiquiri. Now, I have not made an Ardbeg Daiquiri. I can't imagine it, but it's got to be great. It's got to be like we talked about dessert drinks, right?
Lime juice, sugar, and Ardbeg?
Exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
That is absolutely it.
Two half and half, or 2 3/4? Which way?
Yeah, I'm 2 3/4 half.
Half of what? Lemon or
no?
Or
I'm half of simple syrup. Like half
3/4 of lime.
Less
3/4 lime. Yeah, because I like it
working totally.
I like it dry, and like we already called out that the sour is a favorite.
Yeah, that's right.
For us with Ardbeg.
Yeah.
The daiquiri is basically a sour, but now instead of lemon, you're using lime. There's no emulsifying agent in like egg white or anything like that. But it's light, it's floral, it's green, and it's beautiful. Yeah.
With the 10 or with the Beastie, which one do you go with?
That cocktail with Ardbeg 10-year-old.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
It tends a little more. It's toned down a little bit more.
It's like more green.
Nicer.
Yeah, I think so. I do like my old fashions with Wee Beastie. I do, actually, if I want to do like a sour, like a classic sour, I'm going to use Wee Beastie.
Okay.
But for like a daiquiri riff, I'll use Ardbeg 10-year-old.
So for the old fashioned, what bitters would you use? Would you go with an orange, an Angostura, or something else?
I'm partial to Angostura, but I'm also partial to Scrappy's bitters, which is made up here in Seattle. Yeah. Miles, who makes Scrappy's, is a longtime friend. I've known him.
Is there a particular one, or is just Scrappy's?
Scrappy's aromatic is usually. I use a base of an aromatic bitters always, and then if I want to do a modifying ingredient like bitters, then it's like 1 dash of Scrappy's chocolate or something like that.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Last Word.
Oh,
it's a great cocktail. Classic cocktail.
Classic. Yeah, classic.
And kind of martini do you like? Yeah, you had a martini on the list.
the most complicated martini on the face of the planet. Absolutely. Bartenders,
Really?
bartenders absolutely hate me.
What?
I love a gin-based martini. If possible, I definitely want them to rinse my glass with Ardbeg. I usually
nice
like
rinse.
it. Yeah, nice rinse of the
So
glass.
wait,
with
when they do the
Ardbeg.
rinse, do you have them pour it into a glass and you drink the Ardbeg? You don't.
Oh,
throw that
absolutely.
away.
Yeah, no, we're not.
You don't throw that out.
That's no. What are we talking about? That's
You're throwing it my way.
I'm just making sure.
Exactly. I heard you get arrested for that on Sundays.
In some cities, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I do.
That could be a firing
bit
offense too. I mean,
Oh,
come on, you can't-
true.
The
Agreed.
word gets out.
Most definitely. So yeah, I'm 2 parts gin to 1 part vermouth. I want it stirred. I want a dash of orange bitters. I want I want a lemon twist, and I also want olives as well. And again, if that glass can be rinsed with Ardbeg, because everything is better with Ardbeg in it. That's my
That actually
preference.
sounds really good. That sounds.
Yeah.
I was talking to a bartender friend recently. This with the espresso martini is like the hot thing, right?
Mhm.
And he said that there's nothing worse for
Is
a bartender than this, because first off, they're always ordered in bulk. You don't get somebody that orders 1; they're ordering 12 for their table.
Yeah,
and you're
that's
gonna make
true.
12 of these things at once,
Yeah.
and nobody just orders 1 or 2, and then you got to be able to make espresso, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
You have to. You just can't use coffee, right?
Yeah.
Well,
And
same board, I guess.
I guess it's I could see it being laborious because they're so popular right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you listed your dream professions, which I think you're actually in my dream profession. Pro basketball player. And my first question to you is, who is your favorite basketball player?
Kobe Bryant.
That's a
Kobe Bryant.
freaking great choice.
Yeah.
You're biased.
I am very biased.
I'm
And he's a
lifelong
local
LA
guy to
Lakers
hear.
fan. Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
he's a
All
local
right.
guy.
Local guy. Yeah. Anytime I'm in Philly, obviously I have a great time going to watch the 76ers, but like my heart and soul is with the LA Lakers. I grew up in an NBA family. My dad worked for the Sonics when I was a kid. So I grew up, spending a lot of time in arenas and played myself as well. Yeah, played myself as well. And Kobe was always somebody who, just watching him warm up and watching him shoot and watching him practice was like, oh man, like this is amazing. You knew that you were watching somebody who was just destined for greatness. And I was in Scotland. Actually, I touched down in Scotland the day that he passed away. And I went and I aggressively drank in Glasgow. And remember getting into a fight outside of a pub in Glasgow.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Because I was heartbroken. Yeah.
Yeah. He's an iconic figure and one of my favorites as well. I got to see his first game in Summer League in '96 in Long Beach, and it was you just knew this kid was special. You just knew this was something unique.
I mean, when you see a really good player, you just kind of know.
Well, Jerry West could tell. I'm not sure the rest of us can tell, but
sometimes they'll greatness. I don't think you need to be a basketball pro to know that, Michael Jordan was a great player. Or LeBron James is something special.
Yeah, but there was something special there. Yeah.
Yeah, you can just tell.
He was okay.
And you also mentioned you wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
Do you write? Do you write it? Do you write it all now?
Yeah, I still write. It's definitely one of my routines. And when I was a kid, my dad used to make me write a story. A story every weekend, just to kind of keep the creative juices flowing. I think that's part of the.
I like part of a lot.
Yeah, part of the reason I enjoy storytelling. And then my mom actually is an attorney, and if there was a word that I had used in a sentence, she would challenge me and say, all right, let's spell it. Let's spell it then. All right. And if you misspelled it, then you'd have to choose a different word. Yeah.
That's great. Now, the last topic on your list, childhood crush.
Yes.
Yes. Now, this is a great list. Gabrielle Union.
Yes.
Bring it on.
Eva Mendes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And Topanga from Boy Meets World.
Absolutely.
That is all time. That is great.
That's it. That informs so much of my dating arc right now.
Oh
as
my
well. It informs so much of it. Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
Oh.
that is definitely. I was just trying to give y'all as much, fodder for the fire as possible.
That was
I
great.
figured that had to be on the list there as well.
Future guests, the bar has been set. You need to get to this bar somehow. This is so great. We need all the guests to send us this kind of a quickie bio of their favorite things in life. It's awesome.
Of course.
It was very odd though. I have a daughter, so we watched Girl Meets World,
Yeah.
and I
The new
kept
one,
going. Topanga, she sell it pretty well.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Absolutely. Well, now I know what I'm watching this evening. Thanks. I got it.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, I was actually thinking about watching some Kobe on YouTube. That brings back a lot of memories. Cameron, this was such a fun experience. Walking through these core expressions of Ardbeg and then the spectacular from Ardbeg Day this year. And just getting to talk to you for an hour and a half or so, or a couple hours, has been just really wonderful. This has been great.
a few things.
We can't thank you enough.
You know a few things.
No, thank you very much.
Certainly was worth the wait.
And if you're in Philly,
And-
please reach out.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
of course.
Let us know.
And we didn't talk about your background. You were a bartender, correct?
Yep, I came up in the bar industry. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're talking cocktails, this guy knows how things work together and how to put a recipe together. And we could tell. I think and these whiskeys are so great. We talked about this earlier for cocktails. Boy, they're just really spectacular. And the spectacular is spectacular. It really is.
It is.
It's really good.
They're great for however you want to drink them. Yeah.
And thank you for recommending the movie because it really brought back a lot of memories and it really made me laugh, which that was really great. Cameron, thank you. Laura Badish, thank you again for putting this together and sending the wonderful samples to us. Ardbeg's there, you can find it everywhere. It's in all your markets and your local stores. And that's spectacular. Maybe not so hard to find, maybe harder to find, but look it up. It's really good.
Definitely worth finding.
Worth finding. Cameron, thank you. Stick around for a sec. We're going to run out our intros, our extros, and then we'll talk.
Outro.
Credits.
That's what they call them in credits.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what we watch when we drink. This will be on a podcast in a couple weeks, maybe less.
Probably
you
next
can
week.
download it. Maybe next week. There we go.
It all
You can
sounds good
download
to me,
it and then share with your friends. That's right.
All right.
Cheers,
cool.
all.
Cheers, folks.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.